Hello, today we're going to be building a little app with Cursor's agent mode. This is a autonomous AI coding agent that independently explores, plans, and executes complex code base changes with full tools. So last week we covered Copilot agent mode as well, the GitHub version. And this is actually very similar, it seems. You basically are able to give the agent a prompt and it will go away, spin up its own environment remotely and implement this feature or fix this bug or whatever the prompt is. I've not tried this before, so this is my first time, so I thought it would be a good opportunity to walk through this together. So what we're going to do is I wanted to build a mailing list and a sign up form for that mailing list. So I've registered robinblocks.com. We're just going to have a simple one-page email sign up, and we're going to ask Cursor Agent to build the basics. I'm also going to use Loops, which I've not used before, but it's basically a transactional email provider with an API. This is the API. I know nothing about this platform, but I've signed up and we're going to try to use it with this project. I believe Loops gives you a free plan that gives you up to 1,000 subscribers. So not going to be a problem for me. I don't think we're going to get there anytime soon, but this is a good experiment to see how this works. And the goal at the end of this video is just to have, like I said, a simple one-page email sign up that we can then deploy to robinblocks.com. So I'm going to walk you through that and let's see how we get on. So the first thing we're going to do is I'll show you my setup in Cursor, just an empty directory with a docs folder that we're going to use in a second to build out some documentation before we start. And I've just been checking the setup on the Cursor agent, and there's a couple of things you need to check before you start using it. You can see there's this new background agents section of the settings. To get settings, you just go to Cursor settings, Cursor settings. So this obviously needs to be toggled on for it to work. And you also, I believe, need to make sure that under tools and integrations, you've connected your GitHub, which I've done a second ago. And also under general, you need to make sure that your privacy mode is not the most restrictive. I think the most restrictive is privacy mode, which doesn't share any data, but you need to have at least privacy mode with storage, because this is how Cursor shares the information with the agent. And then from there, you should be able to press Command or Windows E to bring up this agent prompt, and then you prompt it in the same way that you would the agent in Cursor itself. The only difference really, as far as I can tell, is when you prompt this agent, it will start running in the background as opposed to on your local environment, which means it will install all of your repository requirements, all of the dependencies separately. Which also has the benefit of it being able to run independently of your machine. So you could, in theory, give it a prompt, assign a bug to fix, and then go and do something else or work on something else and come back to it. As far as I can tell, one of the limitations right now is there's no web UI, whereas with, as we saw in the last video, with GitHub Copilot agent, you're able to track things on github.com. You can look at the issues, look at the pull requests, and see what's going on through the web, which would be useful if you were traveling or if you wanted to check from a different device. Whereas I think on Cursor that doesn't exist. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And it seems like you need to track these tasks from the Cursor application itself. But you do still get the other benefits of having stuff handled away from your machine. So you could turn your machine off and then come back to it later or whatever. Okay, so let's get started. The first step, I think, is to build out some documentation on this Loops API. I've got no experience with this, and I suspect that the model we're using probably doesn't know a huge amount about the Loops API. So just to be safe, we're going to build out some documentation first. So my first prompt, I'm just doing this in Cursor, not the agent mode yet, but I'm going to use, let's actually use Claude. Hopefully I haven't used up all my credits yet. And I'm going to say, please pull some information from Loops documentation here. And that is the documentation API. Yep, that looks good. And populate a documentation file in the /docs directory. I'll just tell it what we'll be building as well, because some context might help here. So we will be building a one-page Next.js app that handles user emails and signs them up to a mailing list. Okay, so let's set that off. So what this is going to do, I'm hoping, is it will just go to this page and pull the necessary information from here. There are other ways to do this, but I like to build up a bit of local documentation just to make sure we have all the latest information about the API. And then we won't bother doing this for Next.js. I'm pretty sure that Claude or whichever LLM we use has a lot of information about that. Sometimes if you're planning to use some more recent features or some more recent software, then what I would tend to do is make sure that you pull in the latest documentation first. But in this case, I think the Loops API is the only risky bit of software we're going to be using here, the risky integration. So we want to make sure that everything is up to date. And looks like it's done that already. Let's take a look. So it's made a markdown file, Loops API integration guide. And we've got some code examples. It's listed the core API endpoints. Okay, this looks like a good start. And it's also prompted me to create a environment variables file, which I'll do now. .env.local. Great. And let's see the format of that. Loops API key. Okay, so I'm going to copy this and replace this with my API key, which I generated earlier. You can generate an API key in Loops by going to your settings page, I think. So let me just show you that briefly. Yeah, here. So let me copy that and go back to Cursor, paste that in. Great. What else? Front-end implementation. Great. Okay, so hopefully this is enough to get started with. So next I'm just going to press Command E, and this will bring up, like I said, bring up the agent prompt. And then I'm going to record a prompt in ChatGPT voice to text, just because it's quicker. Please create a Next.js app, which is a simple one-page sign up for my Loops mailing list. Please use the Loops integration guide in the documents folder /docs, and don't worry too much about any other integrations or anything else. The sole purpose of this page is to allow users to add their email addresses and sign up to the Robin Blocks mailing list. Okay, let's convert that to text. And once that's done, yep, we've got that. Let's paste this into the context, the prompt. Just check that we've got, okay, so it said /, which is not what we want. We want that. Okay, that's a pretty simple, it's misspelled Robin Blocks. Mailing list. And I'm going to use Claude Force on it. Why not? And you can just check that it's going to run in the background. Okay, let's get that started. Okay, we need to initialize Git. Okay, let's do that first then. Okay, let's ask it, great, please initialize a new Git repository and push it to GitHub. Hopefully this will automatically do that because I think I've got cursor connected to GitHub. It's asking me to just check the Git status, and it's not found a Git repository, so it should do that automatically. There we go. Git init, that's going to create that empty repository. Add everything, and then hopefully we'll also push it to GitHub. That's the initial commit. Great. Perfect. Okay. And then if we look at the Git tab here, yeah, we've got that initial commit and we should be able to publish it from here. I'm going to publish it to a public repository. Why not? Okay, so successfully published. Great. So now that's done. Hopefully this will work. Let's try. Okay, we might need to try this again. Copy that, close it, Command E. Let's try that again. Okay, that's not working. Okay, we need to actually host this on GitHub. Right. I guess this is obviously because it's pulling from GitHub, so we need to make sure that's pushed remotely first. So let's go to GitHub and check the status of that. It's actually committed my environment thing to a public repository, which is very bad practice. Don't do this. I obviously have to revoke this API key pretty quickly. Let me do that now. Okay, let's ask it to please create a Gitignore file for my next JS app and add my env file to it. And then, yeah, so you shouldn't push your API keys or your environmental variables to any GitHub repository, especially not a public one, because somebody will just scrape that and use all of your credits. But I've now revoked that, so that won't happen. And with this gitignore, it will create this this ignore parameter, which will basically remove the environmental variables from that file, and also will remove it from the Git repository. So once this is done, we should be able to push that again, and I'll update it with my new API key. Okay, great. So let's get a new API key from Loops. Generate key. Call it blocks.com. Copy the key. And then we're going to add this back into our file, save it, and make sure all of this is pushed to the remote repository. Synchronizing changes. Okay, great. So now we're in a good place again. So let's go back to this. Please create a Next.js app. This is our prompt. So we should now be able to push that. Yeah, okay, it worked there. Obviously, it just didn't recheck the remote connections in that Git repository, but it seems to be working now. So what this has done is it's created this task and sent it to the agent. And now somewhere on the cursor cloud, we're generating this environment on a server somewhere, I expect, and it will spin up the environment. It will install any necessary requirements, and then hopefully, I'm hoping it's going to start generating this website for us. So we can close this and go about our day or do something else, and it will carry on in the background. Another reason why it's probably good practice to create these documents, this documentation ahead of giving this to an agent is I suspect that the cursor agent does not have a huge amount of access to the internet. So it may try, I don't know, it may try to find this documentation itself and fail because it's behind a firewall. I don't know, but I suspect that might be the case. But we can check on its progress by pressing Command E, getting the agent's dialog open again, and then you'll have a list of tasks in progress. And you can follow along if you want. Let's just have a look at what it's doing. So it's spun up this Docker container. It's installing Ubuntu dependencies, and it looks like it's just getting the environment ready. And then it kind of looks a lot like, if you're familiar with Cursor, it looks a lot like the Cursor interface that you're used to. The difference is this is not your machine that it's running this on. You're still able to add follow-ups and add context and interact with the model in the way that you're familiar with, but just bear in mind that everything's remote and you can close this and come back to it at any time. Okay, so that's finished now. That took a little over 3 minutes. And another benefit of running this remotely on Cursor Agent is that you don't have to worry about contamination on your machine or running suspicious code, stuff like that. The security is much more locked down because you're in this remote environment, which has its downsides. Like I said, it's harder to get out of that remote environment if you want to pull in data from the internet, for example, but it means that you don't need to manually approve all of these steps, and you don't have to check commands that are being run, because worst case scenario is it messes up the remote environment. All you have to do is check the code that's being changed, and that's what's happened. So it's created this this changelog of all the different files it's created. We can see that it's basically, these are the changes. We can see it's created this email signup component, email subscription hook, and this basic API, as well as some styles. And it's got a simple README. And yeah, that's about it. And it's allegedly created a beautiful landing page. We'll see if that's true. And it's also told me to add my Loops API key, which we already have, so that's not going to be necessary. And apparently we're ready to test, so let's do that. The options here are similar to similar to GitHub Copilot agent, in that you can create a pull request on the remote branch, or you can just manage this locally. So I think it's created this local branch, Cursor, and then the name of the feature. So we could check this out and test it locally. What I'm just going to do is click apply changes locally, because basically we don't have anything in the repository yet. It's not going to cause problems. So this will just merge it, I believe, with my local branch. That should not be a problem. And it looks like we have everything. So let's just accept all. And you can see now we're back into our local Claude's environment here, and we can continue the chat if we wanted to. But let's check the README. Let's see how we get this running. And let's open a terminal window. So I think it's already run npm install on the remote server, but we'll need to do that locally as well. So let's run that. We don't need to run this step because like I said, we've already set up our environment variable. It's only one. So we should just be able to run npm run dev. And that looks like it has built successfully, and we should be able to look at it at localhost 3000. So let's check that out. Nice. Okay. I mean, it's not horrible. I maybe wouldn't have chosen this color scheme, but welcome to Robin Blocks. Valuable content delivered straight to your inbox. Cool. Okay. The big test is, does this work? So I'm going to open up developer tools here, function F12, and check the console. Let's clear the console and let me test this out. So test at test.com, whatever, join Robin Blocks. Welcome aboard. That seemed positive. There's no console errors. Did that work? Let's check loops. I don't know whether that's actually gone through or not. Okay, yeah, just check the audience tab and we have our first email address. Great. So that worked really well. I'm very pleased with that. That's a quick introduction to the Loops mail provider and also the Cursor agent. I will just actually now I'll push this to Versal so I can deploy this. I think I can do that with just the Versal -- prod setup. Yes, I want to set that up. And so let's put it in Robin Blocks. Okay, that seems to have deployed. Let's check this out on Versal. That's deployed. Perfect. And Versal deploys it by default to this subdomain, which seems to have worked great. The next step is I will connect this to the robinblocks.com domain, which you can do by going to settings and domains. I'll add this here. Once that's added, robinblocks.com will point to this, and we have ourselves a email sign-up form. Let me know what you think, and I'm keen to hear if anybody's actually using Cursor agents in any kind of production workflow and how you use it, because this is obviously a very limited test, but yeah, I'd like to hear from other people, see how they're using it, and I'll see you in the next one.